watching closely.
What's the secret, Max?
You just gotta find something you love to do and then do it for the rest of your life.
I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me.
Hello, and welcome to The Establishing Shot, a podcast where we do deep dives into directors and their filmographies. I am your host, Eli Price, and we are here on episode 88 of the podcast, keeping on chugging along in our Spielberg series. We're going to be talking about War of the Worlds today, and it's going to be fun and exciting. And also fun and exciting because I have some new guests on today. I have on Mary and Dezerae from the Nerds and Jesus podcast. Welcome, guys. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Happy to be here.
Well, so like I said, they have a podcast called Nerds and Jesus. It is, from what I understand, and it is a podcast about kind of faith and fandom. So they talk a lot about like how faith intersects with various fandom cultures. I was kind of scrolling through y'all's episodes, and y'all have like a good variety of like things
Random
you talk
things.
about. Yeah, it's really fun. But yeah, if y'all want to share, maybe Mary first and then Dezerae, a little bit about yourselves, and then maybe y'all can kind of do your pitch for the podcast, why people should check it out.
Cool. Well, my name is Mary Howell. I'm a worship pastor in the Middle Tennessee area. That's also like a massive nerd. I mean, I go to conventions. I'm a Dungeons and Dragons master, DM master, and everything from movies to gaming. I've played so much Baldur's Gate 3 the past like year and a half kind of thing. So that's kind of my world. I'm just starting to dip into anime. But anyway, with all of that, I mean, I have ADHD, so like the amount of hobbies that I have is kind of pretty crazy. Did I decide to start a micro bakery of sourdough just recently? Yeah, why not?
Sure.
It's the thing, and
everyone's doing it,
Exactly. I always say hobbies are great, and so that's kind of where podcasting kind of came in a little bit into that. But we'll talk more about podcasts later. But yeah, I have an amazing 5-year-old golden doodle. His name is Bucky, as in Bucky Barnes, and his middle name is
Nice.
Flynn, as in Flynn Rider. So Bucky Flynn. Yeah. So that's kind of a little bit of me in a nutshell. So
Awesome. Yeah. Desiree, what about you?
Hi guys, my name is Dezerae, and let's see here. I am a mom of a just turned 3-year-old little boy. His name is
Awesome.
Weston, and he is the coolest thing in the world. I am probably up there with Mary with the nerdum. I love movies. I love manga, anime. You name it. I'm a huge reader. I can devour a lot of books in a year. That's probably one of my main hobbies. I love crafts. I love baking. Not as much as Mary does. She's gotten an affinity for the
I don't
bread.
understand it how it happened, but yeah, I just like bread.
But when I get the artistic spark, I also deal with ADHD immensely. So
Yeah.
we're very
use it.
It's very fun to have us together in person.
We've known each other since 2012, so
Okay.
Yeah.
it's been, I don't know, I can't math anymore. It's just
13, 12 to 13.
something like that.
12
Yeah.
13 years.
So
Yeah, I'm a co-host with Mary with the Nerds and Jesus podcast, and we just talk everything nerdy, and we love it. It's fun.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. So what's like if you had to like boil down the podcast into like, I don't know, like an elevator pitch, what would you say it's all about?
Yeah. So right now we took a break over the holidays, and then our church and stuff, we do like a 40-day fast of just not doing anything secular media, which is also kind of why we haven't really been doing much of podcasting with that as much right now. But hopefully end of March or end of February into March, then we'll kind of like ramp back up and continue that up.
Cool.
So in case anyone's going in like, we haven't posted anything, I was like, it's just gotta take a break kind of stuff and just,
we haven't completely disagreed.
No, we just had a meeting a couple weeks ago of planning for the year, so that's coming up. And but yeah, so the Nerds and Jesus podcast kind of birthed out of I kind of started at least the first year of myself and just grabbing guests on. But we talk everything from, we review movies, but also like talk a lot about the stuff that's kind of really hard to talk about within church, and or just pointing out different things or things that, hey, can we talk about this? How does this correlate with it? We do that, but I also take other nerdy gamers or nerdy video game developers or from cosplayers or those who have ministries that's revolved around that, and I interview them as well. So we do that, but also
we also play D&D.
D&D, that's the most listened episode. I'm like, do we need to play D&D like live more or something? But
it's funny.
Yeah, or we ask tough questions like, hey, not tough, but can Christians watch Harry Potter? What are there dragons in the Bible? We got to partner with a really cool podcast to talk about that and dive deep in the word about dragons. Or can Christians be into horror? There's different topics. Or can they be into anime or whatever that may be? Any kind of topic that we kind of run with it, and we also ask everyone else. But anyway, it's a modge of stuff. But at the end of the day, we always take whatever subject is and we turn it back to Christ. And like, well, how can we as Christians be also nerdy, or how can we use that for our advantage as well, or just have fun with it, be creative. But we have fun. We talk about tough conversations that may have come up within the film, surrounding our faith as well. So we love to talk about it and discuss it, but also have fun. So it's kind of a little mix of hodgepodge stuff. We plan to move into more video formatting within YouTube. Eventually, it's kind of like we're kind of working on movie reactions live versus like also just on video. So so that's kind of us in a nutshell. So
very cool.
Yeah.
So really, like, it's all about just, yes, you can be a Christian and be a huge nerd and into all these like nerdy things as well.
And it's okay to watch it and not feel
well, there's a stigma there for sure.
And especially we talk about Dungeons and Dragons a lot just because that's always the whole thing, but
it's good to break those walls down. So
it's fun.
And there's tons of people of faith, Christians, and plenty of other faiths out there in the movie world, watching movies, reviewing them, and also in all the other crazy nerdy
exactly like
venues,
especially within everything just pops up, so like if Agatha all along is all witchcraft stuff, like we talk about that stuff and like how can we also still enjoy the show, and stuff like that.
Sure.
So we bring all those topics up. Very cool. That's us.
So y'all are both obviously into movies, or you wouldn't be guests on this podcast.
AMC pass all day.
Yes. I so wish we had an AMC or Regal here, because I have Movie Pass, but it's not quite as
the same.
It's
$21 a month, 3 movies a week, which includes IMAX and Dolby theaters.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm jealous.
It's fantastic.
But yeah, so that being said, we're in the middle of a Spielberg series, and I always love to see if my guests can remember their first like Spielberg movie, or their first, or maybe even just like the first time you realize like, oh, this guy Spielberg makes movies, and I know about a lot of them. Maybe that's like your first Spielberg memory. But do y'all have anything? Maybe Dezerae, if you want to go first.
Yeah. So fun fact, I went to school with Marriott and Tissue and did film. So I love this stuff. I nerd out all the time with this.
Yeah.
My first one is definitely E.T. and the Indiana Jones series. I used to watch that with my grandpa all the time. just the adventure of it, the first adventure that I've ever really gotten to like dive in and just disappear into a world full of like, it wasn't even like fantasy really per se. It was just this guy going on all these adventures, and it just opened a whole world of like, oh, the possibilities are endless. And just, I don't know, I just really fell in love with E.T. and then also just the Indiana Jones. For me, for Spielberg, those are my top tier of all time.
Yeah, and that's so special too, to like share with your family, like with a family member or like just someone you're close to. And Spielberg movies, I feel like, are so like they're just perfect for that sort of thing, to like share a special bond with someone over. So that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, I would have to say Jurassic Park.
Oh yeah.
I think that's probably one of my favorite series. Just it's just all the things about it. It's just I remember watching it as a kid and being terrified, but I loved it. I love that, like, that feeling of like, oh my gosh, what's happening? But I honestly, part of it too, I think that really kind of, which is funny, putting it for me on the map as far as the type of movies that I now enjoy watching was War of the Worlds, that we're going to be discussing, because, and my favorite is end of the world movies. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that is my, like, I was like, if there's anything end of the world, I will immediately watch it. If it involves zombies, aliens, natural disasters, like, I'm all for it. 100%.
We're the same people. I'm obsessed with volcanoes and tornado disaster movies. Like,
you know, I am looking through his like repertoire, and I was like, wait, Shrek? What?
Yeah, producing. Yeah, DreamWorks. It's a DreamWorks production, and he's Mr. DreamWorks.
That is crazy. Anyway, but Super 8. Like, fantastic series. I don't know if he did Cloverfield or not, but like, you know, anyways, that's kind of introduced for me a lot of like why I love end of the world movies, was honestly because of War of the Worlds. So
very cool. Yeah, I actually feel like this is, if I'm remembering correctly, I had seen Spielberg movies obviously before this. I'd seen Jurassic Park and E.T. and all that stuff as a kid, but I want to say War of the Worlds, which we're about to jump into, was the first one I saw in theaters. I'm pretty sure. It was, and I'm pretty sure, if my memory serves me correctly, it was like a birthday thing. So my birthday's in July, and I remember turning 14. It was between my like middle school and high school. So between 8th and 9th grade, I like turned 14, and like my mom took me and a bunch of my buddies to see War of the Worlds at the theater. And it was like, I have that memory. And so I didn't confirm with my mom to see if that was a correct memory. But I think it is. So,
you know, just claim it. Yeah,
I'm just gonna...
it is.
I have that special. This is not like my favorite Spielberg, but by a long shot. But I do like this movie and have that like special memory attached to it. So,
I mean, this is where I was like, "Who's Tom Cruise?" Like, oh, this is who Tom Cruise is. Like, this is, I feel like, was my first introduction that I remember as. I mean, I'm not that old. I'm 31, but I mean, still, like, you know, I feel like that was the age where I was like, I was probably, I don't know, 12 when this movie came out.
That's about the time where you start saying, "Ooh, who's this guy?" You know.
I was like, "Who's this Tom Cruise?"
That's awesome.
That's funny.
Yeah. So
Dakota Fanning, like what?
Oh, little baby,
she's so little.
Fanning.
She was, but it's like, it's crazy, and we'll probably talk a little bit about it. But like, this is like by a long shot not her like introduction. She's been like working for a while now at this point.
I mean, I just see her in Cat in the Hat and Twilight at this point, but
so let's jump into where it all started. So obviously this was not some idea that Spielberg worked up out of nowhere. It goes all the way back to 1989. H.G. Wells, the man himself. I don't know. would he be like the grandfather of sci-fi?
I would say
Gosh.
so.
Yeah,
I would say so.
I think so.
He kicked it off at least.
Yeah. And I was doing some research and I found that this is not like the first alien invasion story written, but it kind of becomes like the seminal work in that whole genre of
Yeah,
that.
like people just built on it.
Yeah. And so like his was the first where there was like devastation and destruction and the aliens are taking over. Like I'm pretty sure from what I could understand, the ones before weren't really that sort of story. And so this kind of became like the way to do alien invasion stories. And it's crazy that they were thinking about that stuff all the way back, like well over 100 years ago, you know? But yeah, so it's funny too, because Wells went, I think it was in the special features of War of the Worlds. They were talking about how this like writing wasn't even his first choice. He went to University of London for zoology, and he was a teacher, and he got like injured or something, and he couldn't teach for a while, so he started writing as like a fallback plan.
Wow.
And then he becomes like the sci-fi guy. Like he basically creates the genre. And which makes sense kind of when you think about like a lot of his bit, which War of the Worlds was like not one of his first works, but a lot of those first ones like Invisible Man and Island of Dr. Moreau are all like kind of like very biological, which makes sense with what he studied. So,
Yeah, I honestly totally forgot that it was a novel first, to be honest. And I'm like, oh my gosh, bringing back memories. I need to read it.
Correct me
Yeah.
if I'm wrong. I feel like I am, but the origin of how like this whole thing like really kicked off was that they used to do these kind of like a podcast, but it was over the radio, and he did a
Yeah.
story.
The radio dramas?
He did the War of the Worlds. He read it, and it was so good that
I think it was a
people
Halloween
actually-
episode.
People
Like,
believed
on
it.
radio or something.
Yes, people believed it, and then
So-
chaos ensued. And
yeah,
then
so
that's
that was
how-
the first adaptation of the book, and it was in 1938. And I think H.G. Wells was still alive at that point. It was done by Orson Welles of Citizen Kane fame. So yeah, Orson Welles basically adapted it into a radio play, and they did it. It's really cool and really funny, actually. If I think I was watching a documentary about Orson Welles one time, and they wrote this, and the way they did it was like they kept interrupting the normal broadcast with it.
Wouldn't that like cause panic, I feel like?
Yeah.
Oh, it
And
caused
so-
mayhem. Like
yeah.
everyone was freaking out.
People
Can
were
you imagine?
freaking out, and when they started it, they were like, "This is all fake." Like they kind of had like a disclaimer, but like
someone
if
just, like,
you
turns
if
it
you
on.
miss it, yeah, if you miss the disclaimer, you're like, "What?" Because they keep interrupting it as if they're like, "We have updates on the situation with the aliens invading. This is happening now," and like. And then they
Yeah, no.
producers were coming in and being like, "Hey, you have to stop."
And
People
it-
were freaking out, and Orson Welles was like, "No, I'm not stopping."
And it really doesn't help that they decided to do that in the peak of wartime, like when
Yeah.
all of these wars were going on. It's like, oh, what's next?
Oh yeah,
Aliens?
1938.
Oh my
I didn't even
gosh.
think about that.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Everyone
yeah.
was like really on edge. So
Yes. Yeah, and it's like and this will be like a common thread too, is because when H.G. Wells wrote the story, it was kind of inspired by like it was kind of critiquing in a metaphorical way like British imperialism and this like kind of Western ego that was like big at the time of like we're the best, you know, us
Yeah.
Western cultures, we know, we hold all knowledge, we know what to do and all that. And this was kind of like to push back against those sorts of ideas. And so very like political in its symbology. Then Orson Welles is doing his radio play kind of like inspired by this like fear of Nazi Germany as well. And so by the time we get to 1953 with the first film adaptation, which I wanted to watch before this, but I didn't get to it. So, unfortunately, but directed by Byron Murphy, it was kind of capitalizing on fear of communism and the nuclear bomb in the 50s. So like these all like kind of have these like political like catastrophe, like fear, what's going on. And it rolls right into Spielberg because this is very much a post 9/11 movie. It's like very, very September 11th, coded. Very like they even at one point, Dakota Fanning's Rachel even says like, "Is it the terrorists?" Like, it's very much like all there. I think it's very interesting, that this particular work has like 1889. I have in my notes, I have 1989. It's 1889, and then 1938, 1953, and then again 2005 when this released. They're all kind of inspired by this like like spirit of like fear within like whatever political and cultural context they're coming out of.
It almost reminds me a lot of just, the origins of the reason of Godzilla as well.
Yeah.
It has like the same kind of effects of that. Like, oh, this Godzilla represents the United States, like kind of thing. Like it's interesting of just how, but it's that fear inspiring kind of thing too, the same kind of concepts.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's very interesting. And you can't help but think that he's kind of capitalizing on that. It's, his desire to adapt this movie at this time has to be reactive to 9/11 in some way. But yeah, so Spielberg had bought the script, the Orson Welles script from the original broadcast adaptation at an auction, and began like thinking about adapting it. That was in the early 90s.
Wow, what a purchase!
And so he kind of Independence Day kind of beat him to the punch with like alien invasion disaster movies in 1996, and so he was like, well, maybe I won't try to follow that up because huge success, that movie.
That was also really good. I was like,
So
I really enjoyed that one too.
Oh yeah,
So good.
I mean, Jeff Goldblum's also in it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah, so he kind of has it in his back pocket, and then obviously 9/11 happens. He's worked with Cruise on Minority Report, and I had read at one point, actually like right after they were done with Minority Report, Spielberg was like, "Hey, I have these 3 films that I think you would be good in," and one of them was War of the Worlds. And that's the one Cruise was like, "Oh yeah, that's the one I want to do." But at the time, like after that, Cruise was filming The Last Samurai, and then Collateral with Michael Mann, and then he had Mission Impossible 3 on deck. So he had a lot of projects. But in the summer of 2004,
that was like the pivotal of like Tom Cruise's career.
It was. He's like peak Tom Cruise. But yeah, Mission Impossible ended up getting delayed, the production, in the summer of 2004. And Spielberg was actually working on Munich, which is the next movie in the filmography. So he was kind of doing prep work and pre-production stuff for that. But Cruise comes to him and is like, "Hey, Mission Impossible 3 is delayed. Let's do War of the Worlds." And Spielberg's like, "All right." So he just puts off Munich. And,
that's great.
And jumps in. And I guess it's one of those things where like, if Spielberg comes to you and is like, "Hey, let's make this movie," you're like, "Well, I guess okay. I guess I'll drop whatever I'm working on." But it's like the same with Tom Cruise. If Tom Cruise comes to you and it's like, "Hey, let's do this movie now," it's like, "All right."
You drop everything for him.
Yeah.
He does his own stunts.
He's a star. But yeah, so yeah, the crazy thing about this production is that Paramount, who had Cruise under contract, so they were kind of like the production I think Paramount and DreamWorks were the production companies for this movie. They set a release date for 2005 in the summer, just 10 months later. So from like this project is greenlit, they only had 10 months to like turn it out and release it, which is
That's pretty quick for a filming.
yes,
Back
it
then.
is. It's very, very much is.
I was
So-
like, nowadays, like years.
Yeah. So they really had to get to work, and it's like it really is kind of they're coming kind of off of a wave of sci-fi disaster films. So like Mary probably, and I guess Dezerae too, like late 90s was like the sci-fi disaster movie like
Great.
peak. You have like Independence Day, Deep Impact, Dante's Peak, Armageddon,
Yes.
like and
All of
then
them.
also like satirical ones like Mars Attacks, which I think is
Love
great.
that one.
Yeah. So
Love that
fun.
one so much.
So
I
fun
don't
and
think I've seen
weird.
it.
Oh,
Really?
it's
No, I don't think I've seen it.
satirical. It's satirical. It is genius comedy. Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it's perfection.
I'll watch it.
It's so fun.
Yeah, it's Tim Burton, straight up Tim Burton weirdness.
Yes.
That's great.
Strangeness. Yeah.
I love Tim Burton. Let's do it.
Yeah. Sold. So yeah, they're capitalizing on that. They're capitalizing on, kind of post 9/11 mindset. And yeah, they get this guy Josh Freeman to write a script. I guess Spielberg's like, okay, good start, but I'm moving on to my guy David Koepp, and he takes over the script. Which David Koepp, I don't know, I feel like some writers kind of go under the radar, like unless you're like a director writer, less people know your name. But David Koepp has written a lot of movies, like successful movies. If you were to like go look at his filmography, it's like, oh wow, he wrote that and that and that. It's pretty impressive. But the way he started, which I think was really cool, is he was like, okay, all of these successful sci-fi disaster movies, they all like have the same cliches. And so he started like listing out all those cliches to try to avoid doing those things, to do something new. So it was things like destruction of famous monuments, shots of like a devastated Manhattan, the military guys discussing, war plans with a map in front of like a map of the world.
Yeah.
A team of journalists filming the destruction and then getting destroyed. So all these like disaster sci-fi movie cliches, he's like, okay, we're not doing any of these things. And I don't remember seeing any of those things. So I think
No. I will
he was
say,
successful.
the one thing I do like about World of Worlds is that, like you tap onto that, is that a lot of the action films that we know and do love, a lot of them are like military might. How can we like be the best? How can we win this? And it's always military focused.
In the middle of New York.
In the middle, like a big city.
Yeah.
It
Always.
is. So with World of Worlds, what I loved about it, even when I like studied the film like in school and did those things to compare like essays and things like that, is the human aspect of it. It had nothing to do with the military. It had nothing to do. It was simply a man trying to save his family, and the anxieties and the fears and the experiences that they themselves as human beings pre-alien invasion and during and after, how it ended up molding them, shaping them, and ultimately changing who they are at the end of it. And so that's what I loved about it. So
Yeah.
he did very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, and I feel like Spielberg is like the perfect director for that. He's great at like taking these bigger events and like focusing down in on like the human aspect, like the central family drama that's happening within that. Because I feel like most of his, big movies do that in some way, like in one way or another. And really too, like it stays true to the original novel, which is very much like the point of view of the protagonist. And that's one of the things that Spielberg and David Koepp wanted to do, is they wanted to they switched out. He's not a scientist like he is in the book, but he's just an ordinary guy. But they stuck with like his his perspective, as much as you can in a movie. Yep. And I'm pretty sure it does stick with Tom Cruise the whole time. Like,
Yeah,
I don't think it never like follows his son off here or the daughter off here. It always sticks with him. So, yeah, definitely stuck with the book on that. And I thought this was interesting too. This is a quote from David Koepp thinking about how to like work with Tom Cruise's persona. He said, quote, "I approached him like one of those characters in a Bruce Springsteen song who got married too young, got a job he hated, and just got stuck in this go nowhere life that makes him miserable." And so he's like, he talks about like, I was trying to think of like the character in Top Gun 20 years later and everything has gone wrong.
Nice.
That's pretty
funny.
accurate to what we get, I think,
Yeah, and that's indicative to a lot of people today. They start a job, they keep a job just because it's stability and things like that, but it's not something that they love. A lot of people do that, and so it again, he attaches onto the human aspect of the experience.
For people to be able to relate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it to him, like changing him from like a scientist guy to just this ordinary dock worker guy makes it like more like the audience can relate a little bit better to that guy too, I think.
I mean, even different age groups, you have the son and the daughter, like there's going to be teenagers going to watch you be like, yeah, he's right. Or like, she's like, what I mean? Whatever it is. But
The parental aspect as well. So like when they were just the back and forth between siblings, the back and forth between the father and the son, and him trying to hold on to that childhood of his son for the scraps of it for as long as he could, and then
him not calling him dad.
At a scene at one point in one of the scenes where his son is wanting to run off and join, that he has to let him know that he's not a child anymore. Like whatever this is swiped away the childhood, like the innocence, like it's no longer. So it's like, okay, I've got to make a choice and I've got to let my son go and trust that he will make those decisions. And so it's just
and he kind of has like a Sophie's Choice thing going on in that too, because he's got to go get his daughter. He has to make a quick decision.
It's so hard. That's probably like the hardest decision for a dad to do too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I mean, I really think they did a pretty decent job. Like, we'll probably get into a little bit. I think there's some things with the story in like the last third of the movie that don't necessarily work great for me. But for the most part, I feel like they did a good job, like kind of modernizing the story with the screenplay and making it relatable and like keeping it with like that correct perspective of the protagonist. I think they did a good job. Hi. Quick reminder that you can be a huge help to the production of this show. If you visit establishingshotpod.com/donate, you'll find out how to join the Establishing Shot family through some giving tiers starting as low as $5 a month. You heard that right, only $5 a month. And not only will you be helping me keep the show going, but you'll also get some perks yourself, like early and ad-free episodes, bonus episodes, access to a Discord server where we can chat it up about the show and movies in general, and more. Might even let you choose a movie for me to review for the show. Check out that link in the show notes to learn more. Back to the show. I'll run through some of the crew on this movie. We'll see if you're listening. If you've been listening through the series with us, you'll hear some familiar names that Spielberg has been collaborating with for a while. But yeah, so Kathleen Kennedy, his partner in crime, is producing this one again. She produces a ton of his movies. And yeah, so we already talked about Josh Friedman and David Koepp with the screenplay, but Janusz Kaminski, his guy, his cinematographer for forever. I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty sure it was Schindler's List was their first collaboration, and Janusz does every movie with him since Schindler's List. So, same thing with Michael Kahn. Like every movie, he's the editor. John Williams does all
classic.
the scores.
He really does that. I really think
music.
about all his repertoire of the movies he's made. He's the main guy.
He is. Ron Judkins is a common like a frequent collaborator with Spielberg for sound. There's some other new names in there like Richard King and Andy Nelson, Anna Belmer, but I don't really recognize those names. Ron Judkins is the one I recognize. Rick Carter is his production designer. He's done a bunch of movies with Spielberg. I feel like at this point he just like has his go-to guys and he's just sticking with them. Yeah, costumes, Joanna Johnston. She had some stuff in the special features that was cool, hearing about the costume decisions and stuff. But special effects, these guys have to get a shout out. David Blitzstein, Gintar Repeka, and Daniel Sudik. And I even was able to find like the guys that did the concept art for like the ships and the aliens. Brian Flora, Mark Garbana, Randy Gall, Kurt Kaufman, and Doug Chiang. So a lot of guys working on that. And yeah, I think that's going to be a fun job, you know, like, hey, we need you to draw, here's what we're looking for, dream up. Yeah. What the aliens look like, what the, and you know, it's kind of like Spielberg gets it and he's like, oh, I love this. Here's some things to change. And then they get it back. One of the guys was talking about like, it's kind of like a refining process they go through with those like concept art things. So that's pretty cool to kind of see. Visual effects guys, Dennis Murin and Pablo Hellman, those guys are very important in this movie. Obviously, there's a lot of VFX in this movie.
But even for the year, it's really great.
Yeah.
Like
It is
2005,
very
you know, and before that. But still, like, for the movie and for the time, like, that's great.
I will say this, something that's kind of controversial. I'm not a big video effects person per se.
Yeah.
I love directors who will really get in there and do the old school Hollywood. Now Spielberg, his stuff is a
Tasteful.
little bit of mixed. It's very tasteful. You have some real and then you have some video effects, which great. If you do something that's totally all video effects, you're going to lose the detail. You're going to lose some of that and it's going to be all chaos. So like for instance, when they're walking at night in the forest and the clothes are falling down.
Yeah.
My favorite cinematic visual and it's real. Those are a little bit of mixed in there, but it's very tastefully done. But I'm not a very big visual effects person.
Yeah. No, that's totally fair. I'm kind of on board with that. I think like when something has like too much of it, too much CGI, too much,
You mean She-Hulk? What? Just kidding.
It kind of takes me out. Like,
I love Transformers, but I would have to say Transformers is the first thing that comes to mind, just because the fight scenes with the Transformers, you lose a little bit of that experience sometimes.
Yeah, and that's a really good comparison point, because like Transformers are like battling in cities and there's all these like explosions and buildings and it's like
people everywhere. And
it doesn't kind of like there's something off about it all. Whereas like in this movie, like when stuff is like crumbling and like blowing up, it feels like tangible because a lot of it is like actual practical effects instead of the CGI stuff, which there's plenty of CGI in this too, but they do have a lot of mix. And so that comparison of like something like Transformers and this, I think is like a good like visual comparison of like the difference there, like the differences there and how it looks and how it feels. For
It gives
sure.
you a sense of, how do I put this? Like you're more sucked into War of the Worlds with the mixed duologies of the tangible and CGI compared to something like Transformers, which is like 80-90% CGI when it comes to the main characters, which are the robots, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't know. It's entertaining, but I
Yeah.
don't have that emotional pull as I would if I'm invested in World of Worlds. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Spielberg, I have this quote a little further down. This is something Spielberg was talking about, like in the way he works. It's really interesting and very true, I think, for when you watch through his movies. But he said, quote, "On a movie set, you're reacting, as the actors do, to what's around you. So the general environment is very inspirational, and it tells me where to put the camera and how to stage the scene. I prefer making things up as I go along right there on the day to really conceive stuff without any preconceptions," unquote. And so
I like that.
yeah, in that quote, he's like, the context is he's talking about like having a real set, like not being in a room with a green screen and a few props, but like having a real set where you can like interact with the environment. You know, he's like, it tells me like where to put the camera, and it tells me where to put the actors when I get into that space, that real actual space. I think there's something like really meaningful there too, in a time where like we're like almost always like inundated with a virtual space of like getting into a real space with real people and like interacting with real things can be like very meaningful. So yeah, I thought that was a cool, like just a cool thing to think about with Spielberg. But yeah, the only other like big name that I wanted to shout out was Vic Armstrong, who's the stunt coordinator. Vic Armstrong is Indiana Jones, basically. Anytime you don't see Ford's face in a stunt, it's probably Vic Armstrong.
That's awesome.
So I wanted to give him. It's been a while since his name has popped up on the podcast, because I think that probably the last time he worked with Spielberg was probably on Last Crusade, which was end of the 90s. So, I mean, end of the 80s. So yeah, Vic Armstrong is back, and he's doing all the stunts with Tom Cruise. So,
Wow.
I feel like stunt people don't get enough credit. And
they don't.
No.
That's why the Fall Guy is great.
I know. The Fall Guy.
I didn't see it. I need to see it.
It's very fun.
Sometime.
Very fun.
Yeah.
I love the idea of, and you know, stunt people need to have their spotlight as well.
Yeah.
You know, they need to eventually. They're actors essentially too. They you just don't get to see their faces all the time.
Right.
So.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to see. I think is it the Golden Globes, or is it the Screen Actors Guild? One of those awards added like a stunt award.
I think they did.
See. I would love to
Didn't
see
they?
the
The
Oscars
Oscars?
do it. Oscars haven't yet.
They should.
Or-
They really should.
Yeah, or maybe they have it on the docket to add in the future. I don't know.
Or it's one of those where like they actually do it but not televise it, you know?
No, it's
Probably.
not. It's not currently.
No?
I think
I
it's
don't know.
one. I
don't
think
know.
it's one they're in talks of like potentially adding. But
I mean,
Happy
they
about it.
should have done that like a long time ago. I think it's a fantastic idea just because they give their bodies physically to these roles. I mean,
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, that's true.
it's like
Yeah.
they do more of it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so speaking of stunts, the spokesman of stunts himself, Tom Cruise, just digging into the cast, playing Ray Ferrier, Spielberg obviously wanted to work with Cruise again. Cruise hops on. This movie has a pretty big budget, but it would have been even bigger with Cruise if he would have taken a salary, but he didn't.
Didn't take a salary with this?
No, but it's a smart business move. Spielberg does this a lot too. So instead of taking salaries, what they'll do is they'll say, I'm going to take, so this is what Tom Cruise did. He signed his contract to take 20% of the revenue. So he ended up with at least $100 million
Nice.
from this movie.
No, it's
so
it's incredibly smart.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are doing it nowadays, but that wasn't
Yeah.
really on par in the early 2000s.
yeah.
So.
Well, like Spielberg and Lucas basically like invented doing that. They started doing that with Indiana Jones, the Indiana Jones movies, and so they kind of like invented that new way of like how to work with a smaller budget but still make a bunch of money off of it. But yeah, and yeah, Spielberg, when you watch like the special features, you can really tell that like Spielberg and Cruise are like, they have like somewhat similar personalities in that they like to just like jump into the space, like that quote we were reading, and just kind of like fill things out, and they're like bouncing ideas off of each other and stuff. So that's fun to see too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this isn't like my favorite Tom Cruise performance or anything, but he's good in this movie. He's just like, I feel like he's just like solid Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all feel
It's a different
differently, but
perspective of him, I will say that, because a lot of his movies are very some of them are, you know, like Top Gun. It's very macho, masculine, cocky, like, but with a little bit of feeling, because he's got like these fears, like the new Top Gun that came out. I loved it. It was fun. But with War of the Worlds, he has a very vulnerability to him. You know what I mean?
yes.
So, I think we lost Mary.
I'm here. It's just my camera.
Okay. Yeah, he has a vulnerability to him in War of the Worlds, which I do appreciate, where he allows himself to cry in front of his kids, where he shows that fear, where he does that stuff, which he would.
It takes a lot
go
of
into
work
his
to
room.
get there.
Yeah, he would go into his room and then do that on other films, and so it's nice to see that on this one. It's also not my favorite film of the works, but cinematically, like, the basis behind War of the Worlds, just all of that is just very intriguing, and I think it's tastefully done.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree. I think he's solid in this movie. It does take a lot of trauma to get him to that point of like crying in front of his kids, but he does it nonetheless. That's definitely a scene where things kind of switch for him. But yeah, Dakota Fanning, I think, is great. Spielberg had kind of worked indirectly with her because she was in some DreamWorks TV series that he produced. And like, one of the things Spielberg does so well is like recognize child actors that are good child actors. And he was like, this girl is like just as good as most adult actors at this age.
She's very good.
Yeah, she really is. And I think she has this like, she's very good in this movie of like showing trauma and shock, and kind of like, I was thinking about how like you can kind of many times when things are happening, you can see in her face that look of a child that's like trying to put the pieces together but can't.
Like every time she went in shock.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very good.
Yeah.
Also, Justin Chatwin,
Yeah.
who plays the son, he's extremely good, and he's been in some movies that I've seen that I like. The Invisible. He's been in. We're not going to talk about Dragon Ball. He has been in that.
Yeah.
Just him as an actor, overall is just fantastic, and he was. I wouldn't even say he's at his peak, because I would assume he's doing fantastic things now, just because of how superb he is as an actor. But just in this movie alone, like, you get to see a bunch of layers of him, and he doesn't even have a big role, but the layers that he has, that might not have been written on paper, he very much put forth on screen, which was fun to see.
Yeah, I'm glad you really enjoyed it. I thought his was just very like meh.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's always
I want to see his perspective of how he got home safely to Boston.
I know.
That's all I want. That's all I want.
that's my biggest.
What do you
problem.
mean?
That's
What do
my
you mean
biggest
you
problem
survived
with
that
this movie.
explosion? Like, I'm sorry, what?
And
Yeah.
the way that they wrote that is was very well done too with his character, just because as a parent, like all other parents, and so my kid is 3, doesn't really mean much, but he's all mommy, daddy, like help me, all this stuff. And everyone always tells me that there's going to come a time where a child is going to hit the tweens and he's going to be like, no, I don't need your help. No, like, you're just ridiculous. What do you don't know what you're talking about. And that's very indicative to how he is with his dad. Is like, I don't need your help. Like, I know everything. Like, this is my path. And then toward the end of the movie, he's like running to his dad and hugging him and basically being like, I'm sorry, you're right.
Yeah.
And that's like
Yeah.
how every kid is. So it was really well written with that aspect.
Yeah. I honestly, like, I'm going to be honest. I'm so glad when people have like opinions that are like more positive than me on stuff like this, but I just didn't go for any of that like part of the movie. That was like my least favorite part.
Really?
Everything you're saying is true. Like, I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but like,
That's all right.
but like, so all of
When we're
that.
gone, he's gonna be like, so she was wrong. It's
I
No,
will say,
no,
I don't.
I'll say this, like, this is a cool thing about movies is like you connect it. I can like objectively see that those things are there, that that's what they were trying to do. And so like hearing you say that, I'm like, yeah, that's there. And I'm glad that you connected with it. But like I was too busy rolling my eyes at a lot of that stuff. Like, I'm like, what are you gonna do? Like, you're a kid in teenager clothes, not in military gear. You have no weapon. Like,
yeah, I'm gonna go fight with what?
you have no
With
training.
what?
Like, what are you gonna do?
I had
And
the
then-
same
There,
issue.
there is also that side of things where you're thinking like, this dude is a total idiot. Like, what is he doing? He's just gonna go
Yeah.
let him
And then,
let him
like-
You could
perish.
steal a soldier's gun. Like, what are you
Go,
doing, dude?
go let
Like,
him perish. It's
And
fine.
then over the hill, it's like he like runs over the hill, and you're like, what are you gonna do? What, you're gonna like run, like scream and like grab onto the alien leg and be like
I know.
hitting it, or what are you?
Listen, I will say
Oh.
that like the way that they wrote it and the way it comes on screen is very good. But then there's also
Yeah.
that side where it's like, what are you gonna do? Like, you have
Yeah.
no
Like,
training,
bro.
you have no background. Like, what's gonna come of that? You're gonna get locked
Yeah.
in a cage, and you're gonna get your blood is gonna get sucked out. Like, what's your point?
Meanwhile, the daughter's just gonna be taken by this
But,
family. It's
yeah.
like, come on, dude.
But here's the thing. What I didn't like about this film, which I thought was, it didn't need to be there. They could have done it in just a different way, is toward the end of the movie where they had that random guy that they were staying with a
Yeah.
shotgun, and
It was so slow. That's
crazy.
where it gets slow.
Yeah,
I feel
it's
like.
slow. slowed
Well,
down
it was
too
slow.
much.
It had no context. Like,
Yeah.
you're just meeting this guy, and it's like, I know you push it forward to a human standpoint when Tom has to put the blindfold on Dakota Fanning
Yeah.
and go and kill this guy so that he could save his family, essentially. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I get that aspect, but I feel like it could have been done differently. I feel like
Yeah.
it could have been written differently. I feel like something else could have happened.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that guy was unnecessary to the plot
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah. So he's like,
Period.
it's obviously it's Tim Robbins, who's a great actor, and I think he's not like good or bad in this movie. I don't think he's just kind of
He's
there.
okay.
But yeah, so he's like an amalgamation of a few characters from the novel, in a way. Like the protagonist in the novel gets like stuck in a house with a guy for a while at one point, but
They should have done that
Yeah.
mid movie, and
Yeah,
then
but-
did something else toward the end.
But yeah, it's like I really agree with like the writing problem with that, because for one, like one thing Spielberg's good at is like having slow down moments in the middle of action, to kind of like do a little bit of character development, jump back into action, slow down, do character development. That's like the recipe in like Jurassic Park and Jaws. Like action, slow down for a second, character development, more action, and it's like that through the whole movie. Whereas this is like action, action, action. Let's slow down for a whole 25 minutes and then action, action,
It
action.
had a little bit of action, though. It wasn't even like a whole bunch of action toward the end. It was literally like, oh, I'm gonna get sucked up and throw these grenades inside of it and just explode it, and then now I'm walking home. And
Yeah.
it's like and then just like a little action right here, a little blip of like, oh, their shields are down, let's take it out. And then it's like on the way home.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like that last 25 to 30 minutes could have been structured differently and
Yeah.
written a little bit differently. Maybe he figures that out and then I don't know, like,
Well,
it just could have been.
it's a problem because, like, for one, like, he goes and he kills Ogilvy, and like they don't do any sort of like character development with that. It's just like,
Not at all.
oh, this kind of
No.
sucked, and then they just move on as if nothing happened.
Yeah.
And that's such a prime opportunity to be like, his daughter can't look at him the same way, he can't live with himself, something
Yeah.
like
But
that.
maybe that was the whole point of him just sitting there and his daughter coming up and hugging him anyways, and like understanding she
Yeah.
might not know what's really going on, but she knows that Ogle's not there anymore, and she knows that her dad's kind of beaten up a little bit and there's
I don't know,
blood
she's
on
pretty
him.
smart.
You know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
the look of
And then, like,
pure
going
exhaustion
off of that,
and
too-
just like his soul is kind of just not there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think going off of the other thing you were talking about of like how it ends, it's like this. What was so good about the whole first like 2/3 of the movie is he's the ordinary guy. Like he's reacting to stuff like we would react to stuff. Like, and then all of a sudden it changes to like now he's Tom Cruise again, and he's gonna be the
Exactly.
hero, and he's gonna like point out like he doesn't kill the monster, but he's like the one that points it out. He's the one that gets the grenades into the weird like orifice on the bottom
Yeah.
of the tripod.
That was weird.
Yeah. And yeah, I feel like that is a writing problem of like you built it a certain way, and then you kind of like switched gears into, you made this character into a different character for like the last.
How
quarter
close
of
is
the
it to the
I
to
think
the
you're
book
right.
though, to the novel? Like I've never read it, but do we know? Like, is
No,
it?
in the novel, it's like it is like they do die the same way. It's like the common cold takes out the aliens.
But like the main
basically, but
characters, there's not like like a family kind of thing. It's just mainly the alien stuff.
there is like this thing at the end where he gets back to his wife, and his wife is there, and he's reunited with her in the book. But it's not like terribly over dramatized like it is in this.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
And like, I don't, like you were saying earlier, my absolute biggest quibble is like, why is Robbie there? Like, how is he there? Why? Like he ran over the hill, and then the other side of the hill exploded.
I know.
He survived.
Like,
He had nothing with him. Like what?
Yeah, there's some writing in this that is questionable and could have been done.
Yeah.
I feel like it was kind of hastily done because, like you said, they had like what 10 months, something like that, to shoot this
Yeah.
film, like a
Yeah.
short window. So
Yeah.
I feel like the first part of it that was already written out and then was taken over by a different writer. It's
Yeah.
because they had a crunch time at that point, and then that's how I feel because it's two different. It's two
Yeah.
different films.
But I
Yeah,
feel like for
it
me, when
is.
I first saw it and I saw that he was there, I was happy. I was like, "Oh, I'm so glad he survived. It's great, great happy ending." Like
Yeah.
as a child,
I do
as
appreciate
someone,
the end.
as the average like watcher, it's like, "Oh man, I'm glad he survived that." I don't know how he did it, but I'm just glad, you kind of thing. But now as an adult, I was like, "No, it's okay for them to lose." Like, but anyway, it is what it is.
yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm like very eye rolly for me. Like, what? This makes no sense.
I
Like, you just need to take a poll.
Yeah.
Did everyone you had to take a poll to everybody, all right, did you enjoy the ending or
Yeah.
not?
I personally love happy endings. I like
Yeah,
it when the
same.
people
That's
that
fair.
I want to live because
Yeah.
it's bad enough that we live in a world today where it's like, I mean, we're all gonna go. It's
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
granted,
inevitable.
there is a
But we
lot of
wanna live.
destruction, so
We
it
wanna
makes
live
sense
in
that they would
La
do
La
that.
Land. So I want to
Yeah.
live in La La Land, even though I saw a bunch of people in this movie perish. Like I want to. I
Yeah,
want
there's
my
blood everywhere. Might as well make him live.
I
Yeah.
want my people to live.
Blood fertilizer. Pretty gross. But
Whatever the explosions.
in the novel, the Martians, like their food is human blood. So
Ew.
this
Can
isn't
we-
quite like that.
Can we
but-
talk about the effects of the aliens and how they are very similar to the Independence Day aliens? The concept,
they?
the visual concept. Mm-hmm.
I don't. It's been so long since I've seen Independence Day.
Like the end where the alien's crawling
Like
out
what they look
and his
like?
arms, yes, his arm is hanging out and then he takes his last breath.
I'm looking up.
Visually, like if you go into Independence Day, there's a scene in the
Oh,
lab.
hold on a second.
Yes, there's
What?
a scene in the lab where he comes out of his protective skin. They call it the protective layer. And he's like, I want you all to die, basically. And they shoot him. That alien is extremely conceptually, similar to this one. And so these
They
aliens...
really are pretty similar.
Yes, they're very, very similar.
Yeah, the big head thing. I guess
Maybe
the
the
big,
bodies are different.
yeah, the big difference, I guess, is like so the guy that designed the aliens was talking about he was thinking about a frog and a frog when it's walking, not hopping, and so that's what they were thinking about with because they do have the kind of 3-pronged feet and they have 3 legs and they kind of crawl like a frog in a way. But
Yeah, they do
Yeah.
walk-
the head
they do
definitely
walk a
is
little.
similar.
Yes, they do
Yeah.
walk differently, but their
Yeah,
head
they
is very
kinda-
similar.
When you Google it, the AI overview on Google says, essentially, Independence Day aliens are large insect-like creatures with a distinct head and body, while the War of the Worlds aliens are described as octopus-like with multiple tentacles and a head-like structure.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I guess to be fair, aliens, it's hard to conceptualize aliens and they all
Yeah.
end up kind of having similar looks.
I know. It's like aliens can also feel I don't know. They always, yeah, maybe that's a whole other
That's why I love
topic.
Except
that's
for
why I
M. Night
love movies
Shyamalan's
yeah.
The Sign. Now that alien.
Well, they
freaked
look
me out.
really? They kind of look
Yeah.
like the stereotypical alien to me in a way too.
It's
In
more
a
scary.
a different one, but
See, this one kind of looked cute. It sounds
I know.
weird to say.
They're very
The
curious.
the last shot of it, he looked like a little infant, like a little baby drawing his last breath. He's very puppy eyes and small and feature and all of this stuff. If you compare that alien to M. Night Shyamalan's The Signs, that one is tall, lanky, very original alien, how we would picture back in the day. However, it's more human aspect.
Yeah.
But with the long clawed fingers and the fact that it is like a chameleon and can blend in. That to me, that alien was more scary than this one.
that's fair.
There's so many variations of aliens. I got in a rabbit hole on Googling that, comparing aliens. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's just insane.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
I like movies too that do something so different that
Men in Black.
Love Men in Black.
Men in Black has all kinds of stuff, but I was thinking Arrival. So
Ooh, yeah.
that's so different. Not like anything else, any other conception of aliens, and so those are my favorite alien designs. Ones that are just so conceptually different than anything
That makes
else.
you feel eerie.
It is so other.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I think nowadays if we see something like that, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's typical aliens. I'm not as scared of it when I see it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's probably the challenging part for most filmmakers and concept artists. All right, how do we come up with something new because of the amount of alien content in film today? So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I know you guys have maybe 10 more minutes or so, and I definitely want to get you guys' takes on like maybe some themes or takeaways.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, one of the things I always like to do is like think about intriguing like images or like sequences. And I don't know, what was some like imagery that was used, or like maybe a particular like scene that really stuck out to you, and why?
I have two.
Okay.
So the one that I spoke about earlier, where the clothes are falling in the trees, and you have the moon's backlit in the forest of them walking, that cinematically just is really good. The other one is, the only way I can describe it is a push scene. So it goes from the town where they're in the car, where they get overrun by the people, and they end up in the diner, to then they're walking across the bridge and they get onto the boat, to then the alien
the bridge
coming
scene,
from
man.
the water,
Yeah.
and then tossing the boat over. It's, to me, it resembles a shove toward the end, of whatever it is that it'll be. But it exudes like a ton of emotion, of like anxiety, fear. Like someone who is in a hurry. I have to hurry. I have to beat this. I have to run, and exudes like all these emotions. And then you get the chaos of the people, and
that shot of like
almost,
everyone turning around and looking back.
yes, almost claustrophobic in a way, because it's like you have, and I think that's probably what they were going for anyways, the fear, the claustrophobic, the unknown, the push for that. And it's just like that whole sequence right in that made me feel uncomfortable. And that's also why I kept watching. I couldn't look away whenever I watch it.
All of that is very like, it's such a good example of like how good Spielberg is at pushing action along, and also at the same time like holding tension, and at the same time like keeping a sense of geography, like you know where you are and like where you're going to and where you've been. Like he's very good at like seeing that space and helping you move through it. But yeah, that shot of everyone looking up, like up at the tripods as they're like coming over the hill, by the way, reminded me of Dunkirk. Have y'all seen that, the Christopher Nolan?
Oh man, yeah.
Where like that you hear the plane and all the soldiers like start looking back, and there's this shot. It reminded me of that, and I was like, oh, I wonder if Christopher Nolan saw War of the Worlds and was like, oh, that's a cool shot. I'm going to use that one day.
Yeah,
I would like to think so.
Yeah,
A lot of directs just pull from everywhere.
Yeah. I feel like mine, I have, I guess two, like my own, I think it's, and it kind of relates to like any kind of like end of the world movies, is whenever aliens first appear, like, or the build up to what's going on, like what is happening, like the whole, oh, it's fine, lightning doesn't strike twice in one spot, you know what I mean, and having it, 20 something times, in that one same spot, like the whole like, wait, what's happening, what's going on, like those are my absolute favorite moments, I think, in every film, because it makes me think, what would I do in the situation, like what would I do, like, and I realize, man, I don't know what I would do, and you're obviously going wrong with the main character, but the whole EMP part of it completely destroyed, like you think, oh man, that sucks from down there, but then you fast forward to my other more, I think, a really eerie scene is the plane, like seeing it completely destroyed, and because of, we don't know, EMP most likely, but like what that whole, those scenes, I think, it's just, and it's an interesting part for him to include this shortly after 9/11. I think having the plane there kind of is a little bit of an interesting, like, thing that he did, but I think those two scenes are always like the most eerie parts for me. But definitely something that you mentioned does as well. But those are kind of the two that kind of come to mind. But the first one's usually in every film. Like I think of Greenland also with the asteroid. Have you got a fantastic movie?
I love Greenland.
But any kind of like, wait, what's happening? Like, let's go investigate. And then the moment it happens and everyone's freaking out, running. Like it's
Yeah.
Quiet Place does it well, and the second one, you know, from all those kind of films that have that moment of everything's fine, we're all grand until like everything's not fine. Those are like, it makes me think. I think that's why I love it so much. It makes me like, what would I do? Like, I don't think I'd survive any kind of like natural disaster or like a zombie apocalypse. Forget it. I just know I'm done. Like it is. Like my dog barks way too much. They're gonna hear me. Like.
Yeah. I love the whole like the progression. It's another one of those like progression things like Dezerae was talking about of like there's lightning striking and like he's like no big deal, and then like he starts to freak out a little bit. He's like, this is weird, what's going on? Everybody like running to that like intersection, which is like a 5-road intersection that they found that is so perfect for this scene. And then like instead of it coming down, it like comes up out of the ground, which I think was a really like fun choice to make. It's very good. And then like the people exploding from the heat rays, like crazy.
And he's like frozen when he comes into the home, you know, and
well too, like he's covered in
people.
He's covered in he's covered in people. He's covered in like the ashes of people that have like combusted. But it also like is another like very strong 9/11 imagery.
Exactly.
Like, that's what people looked like coming out of the rubble of 9/11.
I think it's such a brave choice that Spielberg did that just a few years after the fact. I mean, it's just, and it also, like, everyone was avoiding things like that. Like TV shows, films, they were avoiding anything with planes, anything with crashes, anything with terrorists. They weren't talking about it. It became like this trigger, and I think Spielberg in a way was like, no, like, let's go through therapy together. Like this is how we're
it's like the same way to where like probably 2021 no one was really releasing any like films that had to do with the virus, you know what I mean? Like
sure,
but by now I'm sure there will be in 2025. I'm sure there'll be something else. You know what I mean? It's just, and that's 4 or 5 years after the same distance of that, you know. So I think with time, usually they're always gonna like, all right, let's test it out and see what happens, you know.
Yeah. One of the images that I thought was really good, it's in a part of the movie that I'm not as big a fan of, but I thought like the imagery of it was incredible, was like towards the end when they're walking, you know, they've gotten through all the stuff. They've gotten away from the tripod and they walk into the square and you see like all of the red weed is like gray and dusty now. And then you look over and there's like the tripod falling against the building. I was like, oh,
because
that's
of bacteria.
That's such a good like just imagery of like, oh, there's hope. There's still hope in the middle of all this chaos, because you look over and you see, oh, that thing is like messed up. There's
no force field.
Have a weakness, you know. So I really enjoyed that imagery, but what were you guys's like? Did y'all have any main takeaways? Any main like themes that you thought were interesting before we wrap up with you guys?
Yeah, I would say for me with the film, the overall theme with everyone, including Tom Cruise's character, is like the choices that we end up needing to make in order to survive. Like if I were in that situation, would I make those same choices? Are they the correct choices? You don't know that at the time, but it's that human aspect of like whether it's right or whether it's wrong. It's going to be a morally gray area regardless. So will I, won't I is the question. And it's like take into your soul into account. Like, are you willing to make those sacrifices? Are you willing to kill that person in order to save the people that you love the most? Is that something in your character that you're willing to give up and sacrifice in order to make those difficult choices? So I like that aspect of films. Not all the time, but I do. Sure. I do like that aspect when it comes to that.
Yeah, I guess for me, it kind of ties to what I said, you know, just kind of like, you know, what would I do in the scenario? But a lot of it too is just like, I think I would almost do the same thing. Like, how can I protect my family the best that I can? Like, my thing is like, how am I with my family? Like, if something awful happens and don't have the best relationship or something, like, or I got in a big fight with someone and something awful happens, like, my first thought was like, shoot, like, that was the last words I just said to them,
Yeah.
And so that's kind of with them. You just see their relationships, estranged in a way of that brokenness in it, but seeing them reunited at the end because of the trauma, kind of thing. I don't know. That's kind of something that, how much just almost how much devastation, unfortunately, how much devastation or hard times truly bring humanity and people together.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that that I thought was interesting, was that the choice to like have the alien, like the machines be already like planted in the earth and they're just like sitting there waiting. They've been there for who knows how long. Like those are kind of unanswered questions. And it just kind of evokes that idea that like the danger, the danger and evil, like, might be lurking within the whole time. And, and you're like thinking it's out there, especially like in a post 9/11 thing. Like you can apply this like, I guess like culturally, but also personally too, like culturally thinking like the danger is out there. It's with those things, but there's like, it's sitting there like waiting under the ground the whole time. Are we more of a danger to ourselves than anything like out there? And so there's that idea culturally, but also like personally too, like just checking yourself, like, am I more of a danger to myself than like anything anyone else is going to do to me? And I think that's there. I think it's interesting because Spielberg talked about this as like, oh, it shows so well like how humanity comes together when, things go wrong. And I think we did see that post 9/11 big time, of people coming together. But like, there's also a lot of this movie that shows like people kind of suck also when things go wrong.
We're not
Like,
together on this one.
yeah.
It
So
showed the worst parts of humanity, I would have to say.
it did. And so when I heard Spielberg say that in the special features, I was like, I don't know, man. I feel like you showed like a lot of people doing horrible things out of panic.
I think in the
and fear.
midst of it, maybe like out of it, like once everything's done and settled, everyone's like, oh shoot. You know what I mean? It's
My bad.
Yeah.
My bad.
I guess if you like hone in on the characters he was interested in, you can kind of see that that's what he was going for. But like as a whole, like everyone else is kind of like
the panic,
fear.
It makes you think, like
Yeah.
like if something like that or even worse were to happen, like what does that say about humanity if we actually do respond in the way
unfortunately
that
we
these
see
people did?
glimpses
You know
of
what I
that
mean?
in the world already.
Yeah.
And
True.
it's just unfortunate, But
Yeah.
But what
It
would
is
it look like on a
very
grander
unfortunate.
scale?
I know. Crazy. Anyway.
But yeah. Well, before I let you guys go, I would love to hear like your rating, your completely meaningless but still fun to talk about rating of the movie.
Like out of 10 or
Yeah, sure, out of 10 or whatever you want to do.
I would say like maybe 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Mine's lower.
Really?
Wow.
The only
I'm
reason
just being fair.
Well, I only put it high because this is like the start of like why I enjoy these types of films.
That's fair.
Yeah,
That's why ratings are subjective and meaningless.
Yeah.
Yeah, people who are listening to this don't take mine to heart.
She's gonna say like 2. What's your
No.
rating?
Out
No,
of 10.
mine's like a 5.5, 5.6.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's just average. It's there. I mean, there's a lot you could take away from this, a lot of good, but there's also a lot of stuff that's like, it could have been better.
Yeah. Yeah, I have it at like a solid 6 maybe. which is funny because I was like, I thought you liked it more than I did, Dezerae, and you gave it like you're
Lower.
giving it a little bit lower.
I know, shocking. I'm a Simon
know.
Cowell of the group.
But
It does not make sense.
yeah, but I also like think a lot in doing these series about like the technical aspects and stuff too, and there's like a lot to appreciate in this one as far as that goes. So that helps bump it up a little bit, even with like all the like narrative quibbles that I have with the
See,
the
to me, the
story, so.
I like continuity. I like it to be key, and for the simple fact that two different writers wrote this, and it feels like two different movies toward the end. That's why I rated it the way I did. But I mean, overall, love the story, love the whole thing. It's just because of that, it kind of just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. So I would guess for both of you, it's kind of like maybe a middling Spielberg movie. Or,
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
He just has some great ones there.
I mean, to compare it to his other stuff is just like,
Yeah.
you know.
You know, if you compare that to Indiana Jones or Jurassic Park or
Yeah,
E.T.,
exactly.
you know, it's not.
Even
It's
like
average.
I prefer his other Tom Cruise movie, Minority Report, far more than this. I don't know if y'all have seen Minority Report.
Gosh, I don't know.
It's
I don't think
great.
I have.
It's so good. Like I feel like it's underrated and underappreciated. It's a very fun and interesting movie, I think. But yeah, before you guys go, I would love for you to share where to find Nerds and Jesus, where to find the show, where to follow you guys. What's the best place to do that?
Yeah. Well, we have like a link where it's just bio.site/nerdsandjesus, which gives you all the links.
Great.
Everything. But either way, if you know, we're on Nerds and Jesus on Instagram, on Facebook. We're on all podcasts platforms, and then just kind of be on the lookout for. Honestly, I would say like follow our social media, YouTube, because YouTube will eventually be along the way this year. But yeah, so just kind of follow us on there, and
and I'll make sure to put the catch-all link in the episode description, so people can just click on it. And I would too. I was telling you guys before, if you want like a recent movie that they talked about on the podcast to kind of like as a good like entry point, because I think that you both are on that. It's if I remember right, at the end of the episode is when Dezerae became an official co-host.
Yeah,
of
Des
the podcast.
jumped on in the fall. So
So y'all reviewed Beetlejuice, and it was a fun conversation. I enjoyed listening to that. So
good. Hopefully we can do some more. I know we got Captain America: Brave New World coming out, so we're hoping at least to get that one in. So
yeah, I think the Fantastic Four teaser
the trailer
dropped
man
too.
came out today.
I saw that. I fell in love with it. I am so excited.
I'm so excited.
I
That's the
am
whole
so
episode.
excited.
Anyway, I'm just a Marvel
I
fan,
could talk
but
on and on about Fantastic Four.
Awesome.
but yeah. So anyway, so follow us for all that info.
Fantastic Four episode in the future, I can already tell.
Oh yeah, 1000%.
Yeah.
So yeah, go follow them. Go listen to maybe Beetlejuice episode or something like that. Good entry point. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Hello again. Do you know how you can really support the show for free in just a few minutes or less? That's right. Just leave a rating and review on Spotify and Apple, or wherever you listen that might allow for ratings and reviews. These really help the visibility of the podcast. In fact, just hit that pause button right now and drop the review right now. And then you can get back to the show. I'd greatly appreciate it. Okay. I trust that you went and left that rating and review now. Back to the show. I am back. I really, really enjoyed having Mary and Dezerae on. But I did want to continue this episode covering some things we weren't able to get to as a group, just solo. So it's just me now. I'm going to just kind of jump into a lot of this really interesting stuff about the movie. One of the things we didn't mention when we were going through the cast was Miranda Otto, who plays Mary Ann. Very small role in the movie, but it was fun learning that Spielberg. She didn't even know she was up for the role. Gets a call to audition. And gets the part, and then she was actually pregnant, and let Spielberg know that she was pregnant, and he was like, "Yeah, cool, we'll just make the character pregnant," which is always fun to learn that sort of stuff. But yeah, there's some other like notable names in the cast. Rick Gonzalez and Yul Vasquez play his friends at the beginning, Vincent and Julio. You have Lisa Ann Walter pop up. I've been seeing her in Abbott Elementary, watching that with my wife. But she pops up as his like kind of old friend. She's listed as bartender in the credits. I don't really know why, but David Allen Blash plays Tim, who's the like father-in-law, or not father-in-law, stepfather of the kids with Mary Ann, Ray's ex. And yeah, we didn't even mention Morgan Freeman as the narrator. Crazy. That's how the movie begins and ends, with the voice of Morgan Freeman, as you would expect. You also have some fun, like really early sightings of some actors that we're more aware of now. And David Harbour, who was a dock worker, pops up. And then Channing Tatum was a boy in the church at this point. He was uncredited in the movie, but he was in there somewhere. I should have looked up. I should have seen if there were like some still frames of those guys, like in the background of a scene or something. But apparently they're in there. And then the last cast that I wanted to mention, Gene Barry and Anne Robinson, kind of are the grandfather and grandmother at the very end of the movie. They were the two leads in the 1953 version of War of the Worlds. So that's a fun cameo for those guys. Spielberg had actually worked with them on an episode of The Name of the Game when he was working in TV, called LA 2017, which is really a really interesting early Spielberg work that if you can find a way to watch it, then you should. But yeah, actually, I'm not sure if Anne Robinson is in that. She might be, but Gene Barry definitely is. It was really fun to see that. Spielberg even told Anne that E.T. touching Elliot's shoulder was inspired by the Martian touching her shoulder in the original 53 version of War of the Worlds. But yeah, the production, some of the stuff we didn't get to talk about that's really fun and really interesting. So the production dates were November 8th, 2004 through March 7th, 2005. It began shooting just 3 days after the re-election of George W. Bush. Another little nod to the 9/11 era there. But yeah, they had less than 10 months to finalize this movie. From green light to production, it was less than 3 months to, get the script ready and all that. Start working on all the location scouting, all the pre-production stuff. And then from there, they had under 70 days of shooting. Post-production was only 3 months. And my goodness, only Spielberg could make a movie like this happen with such short time. But yeah, so they shot the on-location, like principal special effects plate photography first. So that's basically like the footage that's going to have like visual effects added to it, CGI added to it. So they had to get all of that stuff done on location first so that ILM could start adding the effects for this quick turnaround that they were having to do. So Dennis Murin and Pablo Hellman, the VFX supervisors, they kind of took turns being on set and being at ILM working on adding in the effects in post. So they were really like, by 6 weeks into shooting, they were already like doing post-production work with the score, with the VFX, adding in the CGI, doing all that stuff. So they really had to kind of like map out what they were doing and work on it that way. But yeah, so you have they started off on the East Coast, doing a lot of that plate photography for the special effects for ILM over there first. So they shot in Newark, New Jersey, was the 5 road intersection where the tripod emerges, and Bayonne, New Jersey was the van driving escape. You have Athens, New York, where the ferry boat scene took place. They actually like built a little ferry dock out there for that scene. Not all of that scene takes place. Some of that is in a studio, but some of it is out there in Athens. Naugatuck, Connecticut was where it kind of ends with the military and the dying tripods. That's where that was. Lexington, Virginia was the last place they finished up on the East Coast. And that's where like the field with the farmhouse and the big hill is. Most of that is shot there. So yeah, they go back west over to LA. They do some shooting at Universal Studios. They have the plane crash set there, some green screen work with like inside the store during that opening where Tom Cruise is running. You've got they use one of the tanks there at Universal for the people like in the water after they get dumped out of the ferry. They do some work at 20th Century Fox Studios. The basement set is built there, or cellar, whatever you want to call it. And then also the meadow with the farmhouse covered in like the red weeds and stuff. That set was built there at 20th Century Fox. Yeah, they've got the Sony Picture Studios was the other studio. They did the tripod cage set there. So that was like actually a full, like, I think it was like 80 foot by 40 foot built like set with people in those cages, on the underside of the tripod. So that was cool. They had it like, some of that was like CGI work, obviously. But yeah, you've got guys on cables getting pulled up into the weird organic orifice that they designed on the bottom of that thing. Pretty weird and gross. But yeah, so that was at Sony Picture Studios. You have 2 more on location stuff. Piru, California was where they shot. They found this East Coasty looking area to shoot where the crowd kind of ambushes the van. That was shot out there. And then the very end of the shooting was at Mystery Mesa, which is kind of north of LA. There was a hill there that they kind of used to mimic the hill from Lexington, and they kind of finished the shooting that stuff that was supposed to take place on that hill there in Mystery Mesa with with the tanks and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, a lot of they shot at a lot of places, needless to say. Pre-visualization was very important on this film. Obviously, they did previs for everything dealing with special effects, and then they actually designed the sets after the previs was completed. So the pre-visualization team, designed all these on this Xeno 3D modeling software, and they did all that before they built these sets so that basically like they could be able to show the actors the pre-visualization on these sets that are built just like it shows in the previs, so that they just knew what to expect. They knew what to act against, all that sort of stuff. Really helps the actors. And Spielberg talked about like the difference between being able to do that and actually show them, hey, this is what's going to be in the final product. Obviously much more refined and looked much better than those previs 3D models look, but this is what you're going to be acting against. Whereas like in Close Encounters, he would just have to say like, imagine from here to here there's a ship and it's doing this and there's lights and stuff, and he just kind of had to get actors to like pretend it's there, which they're still doing here, but he's at least able to show them like what it's doing, how it's moving, that sort of thing. So you also in like some of the special features get to see Spielberg really like his mastery of directing. Like he's talking to the previs guys and he's like, we need to get this done so that I can get it to, Dennis Murin so they can start working on what they're going to have to do so that he can talk to Janusz so that he can tell them, hey, this is where we're going to be having to add in special effects. So the camera needs to be able to pick up this, and I need to get it to Vic Armstrong so he can start working with the stunt team so that they know the space they're going to be working in, and he can start planning for that. It's like that's what a director's job is. And people don't realize that. I think a lot of times when you hear a director of a movie, you just think like, oh, it's the guy that made the movie. It's like, no, this guy is holding it all together because there's so much going on, and you have to be such a good like manager of people and time and projects. And yeah, the special features in this really showcase like Spielberg doing that so masterfully, which I thought was cool. You've got a few scenes, obviously, with up to 1,000 extras, like the ferry scene. One of the crazy things was, so it's not crazy that they used real soldiers. Spielberg's done that plenty, but the crazy thing here is because this movie was so September 11th coded, but they're actually using soldiers that like, I think it was like 80% of the soldiers had just gotten back from Afghanistan or Iraq or were going to be going soon. So that's got to be crazy to be like, I just got home, I'll be going back soon, and I'm filming a movie in the meantime. Got to be crazy. Cinematography wise with Janusz, he didn't want to make it too stylized. He wanted it to feel pretty grounded and natural. And Janusz, honestly, like in the special features, says that in a lot of movies where I'm like, I don't think you quite got that, bud. But this one he actually does. I feel like he does a good job. Like one of the things he did was he did a lot of the camera at like eye level because it is like the perspective of the protagonist, so he wanted to keep it at that level, experiencing everything from that kind of vantage point. And so that grounds it. And then too, like there's not too much like stylization with like the lighting work that he normally does and the colorization that he normally does. So I appreciated that he actually like didn't stylize it too much in this one, because it does need that grounding, I think. But lighting is a big thing in this, because the cool thing about the lights in this is it's kind of the opposite of normal. Normally, like light would signify that something good is going to happen or something like that. But in this, the light is usually signifying danger. When the light is showing up, it's because there's a tripod nearby. And so he really wanted to utilize that idea. Like there was, at one point they were talking about, they had these like flashes of light that they were doing, and they found that you do 15 flashes of light, and on the 13th one, it's not white, it's green. And that was scary that felt scarier for some reason. It's like, okay, that's weird to think about. Who would even notice that? But hey, the end product speaks for itself. It is utilized very well. And then in some sequences, he would set up like these interactive light structures to kind of be stand-ins for the tripod spotlights, because the reality is the tripod isn't there. So there's no light from the tripod shining down on the victims, running around. So he would set up these like interactive light things that would kind of shine around and spotlight so that, and then, the VFX team was able to go in and kind of like follow those. So they added, if the spotlight is moved this way in the actual set, then, the spotlight of the added in tripod guy would move that way. So that's pretty cool. Some of the costume stuff I had mentioned with Mary and Dezerae that I thought was fun. Joanna Johnson talked about like spending a ton of time on Ray's jacket. She felt like it was the most important part of his costume to make him feel like a normal guy. And yeah, it works. I thought it was too interesting, her talking about how Rachel's clothes start off like typical, like little girl, like bright colors, like vibrant, and then hers changed through the most throughout the movie, becoming more and more tattered, more and more dirty. So that was cool. And then, yeah, one of the very interesting things was thinking about, they talked about how we're not used to seeing processions of refugees that are Americans. And that's what you're seeing in this movie. So they had to think about like how to make this specifically an American procession of refugees with the costuming and the props and stuff. So you have a lot of brighter clothing because Americans wear brighter clothing. And you have like disposable things that people are carrying along with them. Like Americans have so many disposable things, and we kind of get attached to them. And so you're dragging along these like boxes and suitcases and like, you know, I don't know, a animal crate or whatever, like these things that you don't need, but you're carrying it along because you're American and you don't know any better, sort of thing. They were thinking about that in the costuming. So I thought that was cool. We talked a little bit about the alien and tripod designs, which I think are pretty good. The tripods for sure are really well designed and work really well. They're pretty true to the original conceptions of what the tripods would look like, with maybe like a more modern feel to it in a way. The aliens, we talked about that for sure. But yeah, this one has like a good, we talked about like the mix of special, like the practical effects and the like special visual effects, CGI. You get some of both. Like there's there's a decent amount of practical effects, like blowing debris, cars on tracks and rigs getting moved around and thrown about. Like they do some miniature work with like buildings exploding that they add in, and the ferry boat tipping over was a miniature that they built to be able to capture that and add that in. You've got, you know, a huge rig on the van that they made where the camera moves around and through the van, which that's a really cool shot. I really enjoyed how the camera like moved around the van in that one scene when they're escaping. Getting you really close in for those close-ups on the characters. And yeah, 15,000 gallons of gasoline to turn the sky orange over the hill. So you've got plenty of practical effects going on, but you also have a decent amount of, CGI and special effects, all the tripod and alien stuff, all the, when the road is cracking and breaking apart, when the alien is emerging, is all, CGI added in. And some of that stuff works really well. Some of it is a little like, it feels like it's CGI. It feels like it is. So that kind of takes you out of it a little bit. But most of it's like pretty well done. Like, because there's enough like practical effects to go with it, you don't get like caught up on how like strange and unreal it feels. So props to, Dennis Muren and those guys for making that work. And then obviously like you also have you got to capture Tom Cruise running. And so they have, they basically put a platform sidecar off the side of a motorcycle and have like the camera mounted on there. And so you've got that driving in front of Tom Cruise with the camera pointed back as Tom Cruise is running. Always fun to see how they capture Tom Cruise running, for sure. One of the things that they did add in CGI was there was this like location that the van was driving through, like for the van escape sequence. And there are these houses and this big bridge. So if you think back in the movie, there's like these houses that kind of explode and this huge bridge that like breaks and tumbles down. it was like a last minute idea by Spielberg. He saw it and he's like, "Hey guys, can we do this?" And they're like, "Yeah, we can make it work." And then Kathleen Kennedy is like, "Oh, you know what we should do? We should use that as our Super Bowl ad," which was only 1 month away. And so they really had to do a quick turnaround on that CGI work for that. So I thought that was fun. The plane crash set, really, really great set. Probably the one of, if not the best set piece in the whole thing. It was built out of this just visual idea that Spielberg had of like being in on Tom Cruise and the house is, and it looks like the house is intact and the camera pulls back. And you realize like, no, that whole section of the house is just tumbled around that intact part of the house. And then add on top of that, the plane crash was, I guess, like the context that he added for that visual idea he had. I thought that was really cool. A really cool idea, but then just pulled off really great. You know, they bought a 747 and tore it apart, which I think I heard or read somewhere that they spent like $2 million on just buying the plane to tear apart. And then they built the houses around the plane for that set. Really, really crazy. Looks really great. The cellar set, I think, was really well done. Feels very like dusty and celery, and has I shouldn't say celery because that makes it sound like I'm talking about the vegetable. Feels like a cellar. They filled it with a bunch of like old stuff from different eras to make it feel like this farmhouse has been there forever. You know, you got Spielberg walking around with like props of like the tentacle alien probe thing to let the actors know like, oh, here's where it's going to be. A lot of really good stuff there. Williams, the sound and the score. The sound, there's not a lot of stuff in the special features in my research about like the sound effects, but Ron Judkins just has this like huge catalog of cool sounds that he pulls from. So I'm sure he just did that sort of thing for this one too. I do wonder if this is where we originate the famous Inception sound, the brom sound, which the aliens kind of make here. Does make me wonder. But yeah, John Williams' score here I think it's pretty good. It's a good John Williams score. It doesn't feel like he's phoning it in, which sometimes I do feel like John Williams phones it in on his scores, but this one feels pretty good. I even like felt like there were some sections that felt very like Jaws-y, like with some doo-dooms in there, but he did talk about like having some like musical gestures toward like classical monster movies, and you can definitely hear that. It was cool too. He talked about like he used a women's chorus to like add emotion and feeling into like the first time like the tripod is like zapping people. There's like a subtle like women's chorus that adds a lot of emotion there, and then there's a men's chorus that's singing in like a deep bass that he used to like add tension in the basement scenes. And I thought that was really cool. And the score at the beginning and the end of the movie, when Morgan Freeman is narrating, is actually a like synth based score. So a little bit different, but yeah. This movie released in June 29th of 2005. It opened at number 1, making $112 million domestic on that opening weekend, on a budget of $132 million. So almost made back its budget on that opening weekend. Pretty impressive. It went on to make $604 million worldwide. So at this time, it was one of Spielberg's 5 biggest hits. And I'm not sure if that's still the case, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was. I don't know if he's made movies since then that have made more than $600 million. Maybe so. But yeah, the reception of this was on the whole, pretty enthusiastic. There were a lot of people that were kind of confused by the film. A few of those, you have the New Yorker writing, quote, "Who are the aliens? What does the attack mean? Nobody raises any of these issues," unquote. That's kind of a dumb criticism to me. Like, that's not what the movie's interested in. You just weren't watching the movie correctly, I feel like, if you thought that it was trying to answer those questions. But alas, they did write it. Our man Roger Ebert wrote, quote, lacking the zest and joyous energy we expect from Spielberg, unquote. Yeah, I don't know. I guess Ebert just didn't go for this one. I thought it had I thought it had a good bit of energy, but for at least the first like half, but Ebert did not think so. In Le Monde, which is a French publication, they said, quote, "The film's plot is loose and sketchy, alternately incoherent and concerned with marketing. Spielberg does not care. His business here is to pile up nightmares." And they went on to say it is, quote, "an apocalypse without divine intervention," unquote. Yeah, but some people didn't like it, but it was in Les Cahiers du Cinéma, a French publication. I probably butchered that. They ranked it the 8th best film of that year. So they liked it. Some people did like it. A lot of, and obviously the American public liked it. They spent their money going to see it. So, yeah, Spielberg a few years later did admit that he wasn't exactly happy with the ending, which is kind of tenuous at best. It doesn't really stand up. As I talked about with Mary and Dezerae, not the best ending. It doesn't hold up for me. Spielberg kind of feels the same, it seems. But yeah, and the aftermath of this movie, this is like when Cruise was kind of like on his like weird, he got on this weird role of like really turning in on himself a whole lot, and he kind of turned the marketing campaign into like the one-man Tom Cruise show. This is when he was like jumping on Oprah's couch because he loved his new girlfriend Katie Holmes so much. This is when he's like lecturing Brooke Shields on about taking medications for her postpartum depression, all that kind of. I mean, there's other instances too, and there's even like you can go watch instances where Spielberg's with him, and you can kind of see there's kind of like some, what are you doing? Like, we're trying to promote a movie here, sort of thing. And Spielberg never like publicly expressed displeasure with Cruise, but they haven't ever worked together again. So you have to wonder about that. It's unfortunate because we could, I feel like another Cruise Spielberg team up would be fun, but alas, we don't have it, and probably never will. This did get 3 Oscar nominations for VFX, sound editing, and sound mixing. It did not win any of those 3. But you know, technical award nominations, I feel like it deserves those. Those were all pretty good. I had more quibbles, by the way. We went through some of my quibbles. You know, we talked through some of that stuff. I've got to get some more off my chest. I was not really into the intro and outro. It was super cheesy. It was, I don't know. I just didn't like it. Like, it's quotes from the book. Yes. It kind of has, I guess, like it's maybe like homage to like those older sci-fi movies, maybe. So maybe if I was like a bigger fan of those movies that it's like kind of calling back to, maybe I would like it. But yeah, I wasn't that into it. Another quibble, this dude has never heard of hummus. Like, come on, man. Like, I don't understand his disdain for the hummus. I don't understand how he's never heard of hummus before. He acts like hummus is from Mars. and I just really don't get it. Another quibble is there's an EMP, nobody's phone is working, the power's out, and yet there's a guy at the site of the tripod emergence that has a digital camera that works and is filming it. And, obviously it's just so that we can get the shot of, it falling to the ground, and on the screen of the digital camera, we see someone getting destroyed. But it really doesn't make sense in continuity with the EMP stuff. Don't really understand it. But another thing, we go from people ambushing their van to people orderly, I don't know, boarding a ferry, calmly and collectively, in line to board a ferry. I don't think so. I think this panic is still in there. We talked about Robbie. I'm not sure if the aliens are good or not. I don't know. Yeah, we talked about my other quibbles. Spielberg distinctives. Let's get some of those. Off-screen horror. So good in this movie. Lots of off-screen horror. Lots of maybe even quick glances of horror and then turning away, as you would if you were actually seeing it. Spielberg said this. He said, quote, no, this is not a Spielberg quote. Sorry. Correct myself. This is a quote from the book All the Films, which is I usually have it up here above my head, and I forgot to put it there today. But it is All the Films of Steven Spielberg, a major source for my research. But yeah, there they said, quote, under a barrage of spectacular images with effects that are more anxiety-provoking than repulsive, Spielberg exposes the extent of human horror without actually depicting much actual violence, unquote. And Spielberg in the special features talks about how by showing less, you can allow the audience to experience more. That kind of less is more approach, the less you show, the more the audience will really feel the horror of it. Just such a big part of Spielberg's filmography that he does really, really well in this movie. Once again, sense of geography and action, Spielberg thing. He does really good in this movie of doing the whole a cut to a wide shot where you can really see what all is going on, and what the characters are kind of seeing from their perspective as well. Low angle close-ups, tension building, just incredible composition. He does the slow down moments between action, which we talked about. Lots of Spielberg distinctives here. Intriguing images and sequences. We talked about some of those. Mary's and Dezerae's were on my list. Very good. Great stuff. I loved the lightning storm. That was great. And we've really honestly talked about most of these things. I guess the only couple that we didn't talk about was the tentacle in the basement. I thought that was fun. Good tension building moment. The coming out of the farmhouse into the world covered in the red weed, what I thought was a great visual. And then you have this classic, this is kind of both a good intriguing image, but also a Spielberg distinctive, this image of Rachel in the field just before being captured is a classic Spielberg image of a child that kind of represents the last hint of innocence and life in a harsh world right before it's snatched away. That's a very Spielberg kind of image. Yeah. And so, I guess I'll talk a little bit about character and themes before wrapping up. I don't feel like they really develop, and I talked a little bit about this, and Dezerae felt that they did a good job developing Ray as a character, and I can kind of see all of her points. and they make sense objectively, but for me, it just didn't personally work. He definitely is like joining the list of divorced, selfish, immature fathers in Spielberg's filmography. There's like the classic interactions with the kids, regaining his moral fiber because of the chaos that's threatening the world and his family, awakening his paternal like instincts and his paternal morals. It's kind of like in that way, what they're trying to do is kind of the opposite of Close Encounters, where in that one, the alien invasion like turns the father outside of his family and he leaves. And this one is trying to do the opposite, turn the father back towards his family. And I just feel like they don't develop that well in Ray. Like you don't ever really he breaks down in the diner, like there's like the Sophie's Choice moment, but like, I don't know, all of it falls kind of flat for me, as far as like developing the character. And we talked about a little bit about like, man, they could have done so much with like struggling with having to kill Ogilvy. They could have, it just, I don't know. There was something missing there. I can't quite put my finger on it. And he does end up just like dropping the kids back off at their mom's in the end, which is like what they accused him of doing earlier. So I don't know. It's just weird. There's not a whole lot of character development that I feel works very well in this movie. So thematically, like there's definitely like, he's kind of evoking a lot of like modern atrocities with his imagery. We talked about the dust and ash on Ray's face, like kind of like signaling towards the survivors of the World Trade Center. You have a train zooming by on fire as if it's coming out of the hell of Nazi death camps. You've got the horizon eaten up by flames, kind of like bringing up memories of napalm in Vietnam. I think even like Hiroshima and the colonization of Algeria are invoked at one point in the movies, very subtly and briefly, but nonetheless. And yeah, it's very like, all that is there. It's very 9/11 coded. We've talked about all those things. And yeah, it's just interesting that this is the movie and this is the venue, but it harkens back, like I was saying towards the beginning, of it's really doing with this context of post 9/11 and this imagery that invokes and kind of calls to all these modern, more like recent atrocities. And it's doing what those other adaptations did in their time and also what the original did in its time. It's kind of making a metaphorical statement about the state of culture and society and where we are politically. But yeah, very interesting that this is a vehicle for that. And maybe another adaptation will be a vehicle for some future political, social commentary. But yeah, I guess final thoughts on this. Just like thinking about kind of trying to wrap things up with getting back to Spielberg. This is a Spielberg series after all, and kind of trying to wrap up, getting back to there. Spielberg, again, in the special features. This is an alien movie. It deals with space. He talks about remembering that time that I've mentioned more than once here on the podcast. It's probably been a while, but that time when he was a kid, where in the middle of the night, his dad woke him up, took him out into a field, and let him so that he could see a meteor shower in the field, looking up at the stars, just kind of like igniting all of this wonder and imagination in a young Steven Spielberg's mind. And that imagery and those themes of wonder and like fantasy and imagination just continue to show up all throughout his filmography. It's popping up again, his fascination with what might be out there, that he can't let go of. And it just goes to show like our past is very much a part of who we are. And I think what Spielberg really shows us in this, and this still being a part of him and still like popping up even like this far into his career, and his interest in what he wants to make, it shows us that, you know, those parts of your past, maybe it's something good, maybe it's something bad. You know, it was a special memory of his father, but he had a lot of like, you know, I don't know if trauma is the right words, but a lot of like bad experience with his father too. That's kind of tied up in all that in the past, but he takes all of that and turns it into something beautiful, makes something beautiful out of it again, something exciting, something interesting. And so, yeah, that's kind of my final thought today. It's been a while since I've done a good like final thought takeaway, but that's what I have for you. Take those parts of you from the past and turn them into something beautiful in some way, like Spielberg does. But that's all I have for War of the Worlds wrapping up. Really enjoyed having Mary and Dezerae from the Nerds and Jesus podcast on. It was fun to talk with them and get to know them a little bit. You can, again, find them on all the socials. I'm going to put a link that will just show you all the places you can find them in the episode description down there. You can find them on all the podcast platforms, and potentially, I'm sure by the time this is releasing, they are back releasing episodes after their break, their hiatus, and maybe on YouTube now. They're working on some video content for potentially. So be on the lookout for that on YouTube and all the podcast platforms for Nerds and Jesus. But yeah, that's it for all that. We are next week. I'm kind of like still working on what I'm potentially doing for next week. It could be a past movie draft that's kind of in an old episode that gets its own episode now. It could be potentially a Leonardo DiCaprio performances movie draft that I have cooking up with an old friend. I'm not sure if that's happening, so no promises there, but yeah, that's a potential. And then obviously we will be picking up the week after that with Munich, which is a blind spot for me. So I'm excited to catch up with that one and discuss it. But yeah, that's all we have for this week. I have been Eli Price for Mary and Dezerae of the Nerds and Jesus podcast. You have been listening to The Establishing Shot. We will see you next time.
We were happy here. For a little while.
But look, I figure it this way. Better to be king for a night than schmuck for a lifetime.